HMS Dragon, also known in Polish service as ORP Dragon, was a Danae-class cruiser built for the Royal Navy. She was launched in Glasgow in December 1917, and scuttled in July 1944 off the Normandy beaches as part of the Arromanches Breakwater. History. Pre-World War II, one of the fastest-built ships of the time, Dragon was laid down on 24 January 1917 in Glasgow. She was launched on 29 December that year. However, it was not until 10 August 1918 she was finally commissioned at Harwich by the Royal Navy as HMS Dragon, commanded by Captain A.H. Allington. Armed with 6 6-inch guns, the light cruiser was commissioned too late to enter service during the World War I. She carried the Prince of Wales to Canada in August 1919 to begin a royal tour. She then took part in the Russian Civil War as part of a task force aiding independent Latvia and Estonia against the Bolsheviks and German forces. In October and November 1919, as part of the British intervention in the Baltic, on 17 October 1919 Dragon was hit by 3 shells fired from a shore battery while taking part in operations against German forces attacking Riga, suffering 9 killed and 5 wounded. From 1920, she was part of the 1st Light Cruiser Squadron in the Atlantic Fleet. She recommissioned the 8th of May 1923 and the 2nd of February 1926 at Chatham. In the interbellum, in 1924, she was part of the 1st Cruiser Squadron Atlantic. During 1924, she was attached to a task force with HMS Hood, Repulse, Delhi, Danae and Dauntless for a variety of tasks around the world. Dragon was stationed in Zanzibar, Ceylon, New Zealand, Fiji, Canada, and Jamaica, and took part in visits to the United States, Dutch Antilles, and Australia. On 20 December 1928, she was withdrawn from service and underwent a major refurbishment in Great Britain. Among other changes, the hangar for her seaplane was dismantled. The 15th of November 1929, she was given to Commander P.W. Nels, RCN. On the 22nd of January 1930, the refit was completed and Dragon entered commission once more, and after undergoing trials at Chatham acted as tender to Pembroke. She was commissioned a number of times during the 1930s, and in 1935 was attached to the America and West Indies station. In 1934, she was involved in a collision with a ship in the harbour of Montreal, Quebec, Canada, which resulted in an Admiralty action against her captain at the time, Frederick Wake Walker. The Canadian courts found him liable for the collision. That finding of liability was upheld on appeal by the Judicial Committee of the Privy Council, at the time the court of last resort for the British Empire and Commonwealth. She recommissioned with a reserve crew 16 July 1937, serving as a tender to HMS Cardiff, and in 1938-9 she formed part of the reserve fleet based at the Nor. Wartime career. During World War II, the ship was initially attached to the 7th Cruiser Squadron of the Northern Patrol, operating against German U-boats in the Shetland area. In November 1939, she took part in pursuit of the German pocket battleship Admiral Graf's P. In February 1940, HMS Dragon crossed the Mediterranean and returned to the Atlantic. On 16 September 1940 she scored her first victory after capturing the French steamer Tuareg. On 23 September of the same year she reached the area of the port of Dakar, where she took part in Operation Menace against the French fleet stationed there. Together with HMS Inglefield and Foresight, she sank the French submarine Persée and took part in shelling the port. After this action she was moved to Freetown, from where she operated against the German pocket battleship Admiral.She in December. Until November 1941, Dragon served as an escort ship of various convoys in the Atlantic, after which she was moved to Asia. Following commencement of hostilities with Japan in December, she served with the American, British, Dutch, Australian command forces, escorting convoys to Singapore. On the 20th of January 1942, she was attached to the Western Task Force operating in the Java Sea, which included HMAS Hobart, HMS Danae, HMS Tenedos and HMS Scout. After the fall of Java, she joined HMS Kael'din and the Dutch cruiser HMS Jacob van Heemskerk, and operated from Ceylon. In May she was moved to Madagascar. The following month, most of the crew of the ship was landed and moved to other units, while the Dragon started her voyage back to Britain for refurbishment. Since the rump crew could not operate the ship independently, she had to be attached to various convoys, and it took almost half a year before she finally reached Liverpool via Cape Town, Chatham and Durban. Transferred to the Polish Navy on the 15th of January 1943, she was handed over to the Polish Navy, renamed ORP Dragon and manned by a Polish crew. While the name of the ship remained the same, it took on a new meaning. Dragon in Polish is smock, while Dragon in Polish means dragoon, although the latter still comes in a roundabout way from dragon. Modernized in the Camel-led shipyard in Birkenhead, she was refitted with new electric plant and installation, radar and armament. The refurbishment was finished on the 23rd of August 1943 and the ship was moved to Scapa Flow. For this she operated as part of various convoy escorts. On the 20th of February 1944 she was joined by Berwick and Jamaica and escorted the JW 57 convoy part way to the Murmansk. Upon her return she was attached to various larger ships for training of sea-to-land operations before the Battle of Normandy. Finally, on the 2nd of June she was attached to a flotilla composed of HMS Ramillies, Warspite, Mauritius, Frobisher, Arethusa, Danae and 24 smaller vessels and headed for Normandy. The ship saw action at the Normandy landings as part of Operation Neptune, shelling German shore batteries at Colville-sur-Orne and at Trouville from a distance of 4 kilometers. A near miss by a German 105 mm shore battery gun wounded 3 sailors. She withdrew under cover of Ramillies and Roberts, whose fire destroyed the battery. In the evening of D-Day she moved to Juno Beach sector to support the advancing Allied troops. The following day the ship shelled German positions in and around the town of Caen. However, on the 8th of June a communications systems failure prevented the ship from further bombardment, and it was not until late at night that she again opened fire against the German 21st Panzer Division near Varaville. The following day she took part in an artillery duel with a shore battery at Holgate, after which she returned to Portsmouth for refueling and supplies. Between the 12th of June and the 17th of June she again shelled German positions near Caen, Gounville, Lebazy and Varaville. During that time she also evaded a torpedo attack by an unknown submarine. On the 18th of June she was bound for Portsmouth, escorting Nelson, which had been struck by a mine. Damage and scuttling. On the 7th of July 1944 Dragon returned to the area off Caen, where she was to take part in the final artillery preparations for capturing the city after a month-long siege. At 5:40 a.m. the following day, while waiting for the order to open fire at 49.367 degrees north, 0.350 degrees west, 49.367 minus 0.350 The Dragon was hit by a German Negerman torpedo piloted by Walther Gerhold, and 26 men were lost. A book published in London by William Kimber in 1955 provides a different pilot responsible for the attack. According to KMN, the story of the German Frogman and Midget submarines, the pilot was Midshipman Pothorst. Pothorst's first-person account of the attack on Dragon is described. On the 13th of June, a week after the Normandy landings, 40 neggers and the personnel, many new recruits, began a journey from Italy to Normandy. They traveled to Paris by train and then rode to Normandy. Allied fighter-bomber activity made it difficult to travel during daylight hours, and the flotilla leader, Lieutenant Johann Otto Krieg, was seriously wounded in one attack. Pothorst, as the next most experienced pilot, took command, and they finally met with Captain Friedrich Boehm, a former destroyer commander, who had been sent ahead to the Bay of the Seine to make facilities for the K flotilla's arrival. According to Pothorst's report, 20 neggers set sail in the early hours of the 7th of July. At 3 o'clock a line of small patrol vessels passed by Pothorst, but I had no intention of wasting my torpedo on them. Quote, some 45 minutes later he let merchant ships pass as I was determined to bag a warship. Around 4 o'clock he sighted a Hunt-class destroyer, but she turned away when some 500 yards from him, so he was forced to wait. In the moonlight he then saw several warships in quarter-line formation crossing his path, and he steered to attack the rear ship, which seemed larger than the others. At a distance of 300 yards, Pothorst pulled the torpedo-firing lever and he actioned a post-attack escape. The explosion, so close by, almost hurled his negger out of the water. A sheet of flame shot upwards from the stricken ship. Almost at once I was enveloped in thick smoke and I lost all sense of direction. When the smoke cleared I saw that the warship's stern had been blown away. Quote, other vessels counterattacked, firing wildly as they could not see Pothorst, but he managed to evade them. Later, 2 frigates passed close by Pothorst, but they did not spot him. After more than 6 hours in a cramped cockpit, Pothorst was severely fatigued. He eventually dozed, and in the morning light a corvette attacked with gunfire from around 100 yards off. Pothorst managed to get out of the negger as the gunfire disabled the craft. With blood pouring from an arm wound he collapsed, but the corvette crew rescued him with a boat hook and rope looped under his arms. He was taken to the sick bay and given tea and biscuits. Later flown to an English hospital. Pothorst was interrogated by military intelligence, and although confronted with maps and details of K flotilla deployments, he refused to confirm or deny anything. After 6 weeks they gave up, then suddenly told him that he had himself been responsible for the sinking of the 5,000-ton cruiser Dragon. All this cheered up the prisoner, who felt that his arduous training had not been wasted after all, wrote Becker. The explosion caused a fire in the third magazine, which had to be filled with water, and the third engine was also hit. The ship started to sink on her port side and the angle of list reached 9 degrees, but the situation was stabilized by the captain, who ordered all the turrets to train the barrels to starboard. Although an additional 11 sailors died of wounds, the situation was stabilized and the ship was moved to shallows, where she was to await the ebb tide. After the water was pumped out of the flooded engine room, it was discovered that the hull was pierced across 2 sections and the hull was approximately 5 meters by 15 meters. Although still afloat and repairable, it was decided that the ship be abandoned. On the 10th of July, USS D494 aided Dragon by transporting 17 of her officers and 320 of her enlisted men from Normandy to England. Until the 15th of July, the remaining rump crew dismantled the armament. An additional 2 bodies were found in the ship, and the dead were buried at sea. On the 16th of July she was decommissioned and then towed to Mulberry Bay, where on the 20th of July she was scuttled to form part of the artificial breakwater near Corsel. On the 4th of October 1944, she was replaced in Polish service with ORP Conrad, formerly HMS Dragon, sister ship HMS Danae.